Welcome to this episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. On this episode, I speak to Archana Godbole, who is the founder and director of the Applied Environmental Research Foundation. The theme of today's episode is the conservation of sacred groves, which are tracts of forests which are regenerated around places of worship. Sacred groves are predominantly found in the forests of Rajasthan, Meghalaya, Madhya Pradesh, and the Karnataka and Maharashtra regions of the Western Ghats. We talk about all the extensive work AERF is doing to conserve sacred groves and more. Tune into this episode and don't forget to share and subscribe. Welcome, Archana. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Hi Anish, good to see you and thanks for following me for this podcast.
What does AERF stand for and what is the idea behind this?
AERF's long form is Applied Environmental Research Foundation. And as you know, in the name itself, we do a lot of applied research, not just academic research. We do work which makes difference on the ground for conservation of forests, conservation of biodiversity, and how all this will be, beneficial to community. So this is what AERF is. We started almost 30 years ago in 1994-95. Before that, I was working in Botanical Survey of India, Western Circle, Pune office. While working there, I realized that, I may not be able to make difference or, try to implement my ideas, however weird they are, by remaining in the government setup. So I left my job after completing the PhD. I did my PhD in ethnobotany, that is the study of how indigenous communities they use plants and forests and what we can learn from them about conservation. So after completing my PhD, I left the job and I started Applied Environmental Research Foundation with few young like-minded friends. And in first 6 months, we completed the formalities of registration and all. And since during my PhD days, I worked quite a lot and tried to understand what sacred groves are. We've decided that let's see if we can start our work with sacred groves. And fortunately, we ended up in Ratnagiri district of Northern Western Ghats, where there are large number of sacred groves, of course degraded, but there was quite a lot of scope to go and work with communities, whether we can really bring back the old tradition and develop some kind of a long-term approach for conservation of sacred groves. But yeah, our main objective and main goal was to work on the ground and to make change, to see that, to demonstrate how the change can happen and how things could be done on the ground. We purposefully decided that we will not do policy research or rural development because there are lots and lots of organizations working on that. And even though in those days there were many such organizations were there, but there were very few who were working with the main goal of conservation. So for us, since our inception date till date, conservation first is our goal.
You have been working on the conservation of sacred groves over 3 decades. What are the key milestones? And firstly, what exactly are sacred groves and what are the main threats?
See, sacred groves are traditionally maintained and protected patches of forests available that are available in the northern Western Ghats as well as other parts of India, and they are also um, observed across the globe in different countries and different continents. Basically, it's the very rich cultural practice of local communities to keep aside a patch of forest for a deity, for your ancestors, for evil spirits or spirits, or deity of the clan and so on. So these are generally known across as sacred forests, and they are identified. They are known by various names across the country, like In Karnataka, they are called as kans. In Kerala, they are called as cows. In Tamil Nadu, they are called as kovil kadus. In central India, they are called as sarana. If you go to Rajasthan and Gujarat, they are called as orants or devbanis. So this tradition is uh, could be seen across the country, except in areas like Punjab and probably Haryana, where agriculture has been settled and there was no forest for, almost for a couple of centuries, one would say. So this rich tradition is very important in today's context because these sacred groves are the treasure troves of biodiversity because uh, in the northwestern Ghats as well as elsewhere, you can see a patch of forest on the background of barren landscape. So this small patch is very important because it maintains the relict forests, that is the ancient forests which were prevalent in a particular area, and you can see some of the very rare and endangered plant species thriving only in these sacred forests. The size of these sacred forests could be like a small patch of 5 to 10 acres, or sometimes it may be 100 acres or even more. And these are absolutely amazing laboratories if you want to study the ancient vegetation in a particular area. If you want to learn about the ecosystem services, if you want to learn about ecology of a particular area, and obviously around this protection of forest, lot of um, understanding and development of culture, especially in terms of deities, how the deities have developed, why the sacred forests were kept in their names, how the whole landscape was sacred because of such deities and their influence. So all that is also linked. There are two kind of theories. Some people say that it was mainly the worship of deities and ancestors, and therefore to maintain the secrecy, these forests and sanctum sanct in that small area was maintained and protected by the communities. So this is one viewpoint, and some researchers would say that mainly the ancestors and wise people of the past, they knew that we need to have some kind of a gene bank or a place where all the biodiversity from an area could be preserved for posterity in situ. And therefore, they put the deities and link the deities with conservation. So that's how these sacred groves are. I can really talk about sacred groves and our work and my research and understanding across the country, also in other countries for a long time. But I think let's move to another question. So this tradition is very important and we can learn for conservation even today. Now, of course, it is not all great that all the communities and all the indigenous people are maintaining and protecting their sacred groves as their previous generations. As the development has started, as everyone is trying to make best use of their land and get direct benefits. So people also started destroying or using the sacred groves for their for their benefits. And at some places, local people have converted these ancient forests into kind of gardens, and they have done beautification. You can see at many places in Ratnagiri district, in Chiprun block, or sometimes government wanted to make a road. So obviously, if the sacred grove is falling in the shortest possible route, it was cut. Uh, then sometimes the local people would like to renovate their temples and they don't have money, so they cut the ancient giant trees from the sacred groves and sold that wood and generated the money for renovation. So there are lots and lots of issues and threats, to these sacred groves. But in my opinion, the most important thing is the way younger generations and the people around the real natural resources in the remote areas were connected to nature. That connection has lost in say last 30, 40 years. And once that connection of deities, their culture, traditions, and nature has been lost, then there was absolutely no problem for local people to cut or clear fail the sacred groves. So in our work, most important thing is how do we re-establish that connection of local people with such traditions and nature forms the that is very important to us. And the funniest thing is, especially in the northern Western Ghats, where most of the land is owned by local people, the only common lands available were sacred groves. And in early 80s, there was a drive of social forestry, and government had given targets to different states and districts to complete their plantations. In the northern Western Ghats in Ratnagiri and Sindhudurg, since other common land or revenue land or forest land was not available, so Forest Department, Social Forestry Directorate, uh, unknowingly, they clear fed the sacred groves, gave some money to local people, local villages, and they planted acacia auriculiformis or eucalyptus plantations. So in the process, we have lost many rare and endangered species. And another very important thing is, even if you want to, remove those plantations, because those plantations are quite old now, the process of getting permission from Forest Department as well as Revenue Department to cut those trees and use that area to regenerate, rejuvenate, restore the sacred forest is very long. So these are various issues, that are around the sacred forest.
Talk about some of the work you have done regarding the conservation of sacred groves in the northwestern Ghats and how you have scaled these conservation projects up.
I think we started with awareness generation and talking to people what the sacred groves are and what is their perception and what they want to do with their sacred groves. And a long time ago when we started this work in 1998-99, after our scanning of the area and understanding the sacred groves and issues around these sacred forests, we have selected a few villages and we started talking to people. And in one village, Vashi Tarpa Sangameshwar, we got very good response from people. And with our efforts, we could, restore that sacred grove of 22 acres, about 7.5 hectares, to its, past glory. When we started working there, many large trees were cut and areas were opened up. So we did plantation of indigenous species there, number one, and later on, with a lot of follow-up and work with communities, the local people put a stone fence around this 22 acres of sacred forest, which was a huge, big work, and we never paid us even single rupee to them. So this was the real community partnership and engagement. And from there, we started replicating that model that, if people can collaborate with us for plantations and see what the response is. And we realized that for say few years, 5 to 6 years, people were interested in doing such plantations and rejuvenating the sacred groves. But later on, there was quite a lot of pressure to use the trees within the sacred forest. In some cases, people wanted to renovate their temples within the sacred forest. And then they said that, why can't we get some direct benefits from these groups? So we started working on that. And since last 11 years, we are working with communities and we have developed successful sacred grove-based green enterprises, that is saving the giant ancient trees within the sacred groves, also collect the non-timber forest produce like fruits of Terminalia cebula and Terminalia bellerica. In the process, engage with communities, get this whole enterprise certified, and give more prize to the community and collectors through this collection of fruits. And then we also have the processing center where we process and make this into some of the Ayurvedic medicines, and then we export it. And all these products are Fairwide certified. So I'm just telling you in short, but it took us like quite a lot of time to develop this approach and to engage meaningfully with communities and share the benefits with them. And we have definitely scaled this up. We started with a few sacred groves. Now in we are working and using this enterprise model in more than 22 sacred forests from Ratnagiri district, and also a few from Pune district, where we collect these fruits. And then we are also looking at what other kinds of trees are available. Many people ask me the question that uh, as a part of rules and regulations of managing sacred groves, to collect anything was forbidden, and how do you do that? But it is not the case in all the sacred groves. If the village elders decide that they can collect without destroying or cutting the trees, then such collections are allowed. And of course, you have to take the deities' permission before you do any activity within the sacred forest. So that was quite possible. And um, in that sense, we have definitely linked the conservation of sacred forests and community benefits. On top of it, there are biodiversity management committees, which are the local bodies established as a part of Biodiversity Act of India, and these bodies are responsible for protection. But since they don't have any resources or financial support, they can't do conservation. But through this, they are getting direct incentives over and above the higher price which we give to local people for collection. And therefore, all the BMCs, biodiversity management committees, are also engaged with us in protection of sacred groves. And now we are planning to, scale it up to other areas where such trees or other trees where we can go for international certification and get more prize, in the process build community capacity of the community. So that's what is going on, and that is definitely a very unique approach AERF is following, because there is no other example in the country where sacred groves have been brought under such kind of green enterprise, and that could be really beneficial both to people as well as conservation. In the process, we are also contributing to conservation of landscape, in the sense that the trees which we are protecting from sacred forests, they are Terminalia bilirica trees, and these ancient giant trees, these trees are used as nesting sites by great hornbills and Malabar grey hornbills, and Malabar pied hornbills. And these hornbills, in turn, are responsible for dispersal of many tree species across the landscape. And in this landscape, dispersal by such birds is extremely important, because we don't have any protected areas. All the landscape is open. Anybody can access and cut the forest completely. So, and later on, they never replant it again. So it is very important that, this linkage of sacred groves, hornbills, local people's enterprise, and landscape level conservation. I think this is only one unique example from Western Ghats, and we are very happy that we could develop, this kind of approach, and that is actually contributing to conservation of sacred groves to a large extent.
So beyond sacred groves, could you briefly talk about some of the other work AERF does?
Yeah, sacred groves is our very long and first program, and I'm very happy that it is still continued. It is still continued till date. We work for conservation on the ground, and we look at landscape level approach, where we are trying to ensure conservation of unprotected landscape using the conservation agreement approach, or conservation easement approach, as it is called in the West, where the local landowners enter into an agreement with us for not cutting this and not giving their forest to a logging contractor. And in lieu of that, we provide them some direct cash incentive. Then once we enter into such agreements, we do a lot of investment and see that the degraded or forest land which is brought under agreement will improve and will get money to local people. So within say 5 to 10 years, they will take the decision for not cutting the forest and making best use of it to get some continuous annual income out of that. So we're working on that. Then we are also doing a lot of work for mangrove conservation in Raigad district and Ratnagiri district, because alongside the Western Ghats, we also have a big western coastal area. So we're working for mangrove conservation. Then we are working on promotion of biofuel trees like Pungamia pinnata, and then we are also we have a couple of campaigns running on global giving. One of the big campaign is Save Giant Trees, So we are saving trees, giant trees, big trees, ancient trees from the sacred forest, but as well as many, many sacred trees outside the sacred forest, along the roadsides in somebody's backyard. So far we have protected more than 6,000 such giant trees, and you can see many interesting reports on Global Giving website. And this campaign, then we also have another campaign where we are looking at protection of bees, because you know how bees are important and how pesticides have destroyed the bees. So we are working on that. Then we are also working with a lot of corporate companies to bring conservation into their focus, because most of the companies use their CSR money for philanthropic work and development work, rural development work, but we are working with many good companies where they understand that equal investment is required for conservation, because conservation is a expensive affair. It's not like you just put 5 rupees and you can save 500 acres of forest. So we are working with many corporate companies. We have a separate program for that called as business and biodiversity. So we also do a lot of capacity building of different stakeholders, especially the corporate managers and the traders and those who are engaged in our enterprise model. So we do a lot of capacity building, and sometimes if it is required, we also work with school children if they are engaged in our programs, but we never do plantations and awareness programs in isolation unless they have any direct connection into conservation work we do. Then we have a big program where we are promoting use of improved cook stoves, and how those improved cook stoves can reduce the carbon emissions, and how the companies can gain some points for reaching their net zero targets. And then we are also looking at long-term carbon finance based on deforestation and afforestation and restoration are concerned. Then we are into restoration of sacred forests and other degraded forests that are under our conservation agreements. So, once you have to do conservation, then you have to do range of activities, because in conservation, the answers to the conservation issues, they lie in different approaches, and you can't have something copy pasted or the same approach replicable everywhere. We also expanded our work of enterprises in the central India, in Chhattisgarh and in eastern Maharashtra. Then at both places in the northern Western Ghats as well as in the central Indian landscape, we are looking at corridor connectivity, where wildlife movement will be secured through such protected corridors, and that will contribute to reduce the man-animal conflict or help promote man-animal coexistence as it was before. So we do a range of activities, and I think within half an hour's time, it is very, very limited way I can explain. But yeah, this is what we are doing, and I always say that for conservation, you need to come up with 100 ideas every day, and next day you understand that out of these 100, like just half idea is workable or doable. start working on that. And if you think that you need to work on more ideas, think again of 100 ideas. So that's how it goes. And I'm very happy that great organizations have been supporting us, like World Land Trust from UK, or Conservation International, or companies like ATE, or um, LTI Mindtree. They are supporting our conservation work. So there are lots and lots of individuals and companies and conservation organizations within India, outside India. They have been supporting our work. Like earlier, for my work on sacred forest, I received an award for that. But I think accolades, they come and go. You have to be firm on the ground all the time. You need to talk with communities, understand their perception, and see the change around, and how in the changing situation you still continue getting community support for conservation, I think is the biggest challenge. And at AERF, me and my team of uh, 60 people, including many, many local people, we are constantly working on that.
So, what have been some of the most prominent challenges you have faced at AERF and personally in your conservation career?
As I said, for conservation, every day there are challenges, because there is no one fix to all. So you need to always understand the challenge, what it is and where it takes you, and whether you can really address that or not. Like, we are not going and fighting with logging contractors, who are getting the contracts of cutting sacred forest or private forest. Instead, we go to communities and request them. So where to address and what is to be done. But yeah, I think the globalization and money is becoming the best denominator of everything. Even in the rural settings in India is the biggest challenge. And unless conservation can really bring a lot of money to people, it's very difficult to work in such open access landscape, and keep demonstrating that conservation can bring you money.
And my final question for you today is that how can individuals contribute to AERF?
We have a program called My Forest and Sponsor a Forest. So you can go to our website, www.aerfindia.org or www.myforest.co.in, and you can donate. Or we have 3 live running campaigns on Global Giving. Global Giving is a crowdfunding site, and we have 3 ongoing campaigns, so you can work like that. And most importantly, it's not just donating, you can come and volunteer with us. There is a volunteering form available on our website. You can participate. Um, and most importantly, if you seriously love biodiversity and nature, see to it that you will always try to take care of, ecosystems around you, or at least plant few indigenous trees and take care of those trees. Of course, planting trees individually may not be sufficient to save the earth and contribute to reduce the effect of climate change, but still that is very important. And I think uh, as far as environment and overall well-being of the nature is concerned, there are lots and lots of issues and problems, and see how each one can really take up some issue and contribute to resolve that issue for long term.
So that is the final question I had for you today. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.